Yours very much?" Balmordan nodded. "I had the same impression." Perhaps, Trigger thought, that was why Pilli had been lurking so close to them. She watched the biostructure move off down the terrace, grotesque and huge. She had got its scent as it went past her, a fresh, rather pleasant whiff, like the smell of ripe apples. An almost amiable sort of nightmare figure Pilli was. The apple scent went with that, seemed to fit it. But nightmare was there too. She found herself feeling rather sorry for Pilli. "In a way," Lyad said, "Pilli brings us to that matter of business I mentioned this afternoon." The group's eyes shifted over to her. She smiled. "We have good scientists on Tranest," she said. "As Pilli, I think, demonstrates." She nodded at Balmordan. "There are good scientists in the Degavus Union. And everyone here is aware that the treaties of restriction imposed on both our governments have made it impossible for our citizens to engage seriously in plasmoid research." Trigger nodded briefly as the light amber eyes paused on her for a moment. Quillan had cautioned her not to show surprise at anything the Ermetyne might say or do. If Trigger didn't know what to say, she was merely to look inscrutable. "I'll scroot," he explained. "The others won't. I'll take over then, and you just follow my lead. Get it?" "Balmordan," Lyad said, "I understand you are going to Manon to attend the seminars and demonstrations on the plasmoid station." "That is true, First Lady," said Balmordan. "Now I," Lyad told the company, "shall be more honest. The information released in those seminars is of no value whatever. He," she nodded at the Degavus scientist, "and I are going to Manon with the same goal in mind. That is to obtain plasmoids for our government laboratories." Balmordan smiled amiably. Trigger asked, "How do you intend to obtain them?" "By offering very large sums of money, or equivalent inducements, to people who are in a position to get them for me," said Lyad. Quillan tut-tutted disapprovingly. "The First Lady's mind," he told Trigger, "turns readily to illegal methods." "When necessary," Lyad said, undisturbed. "As it is here." "How about you, sir?" Quillan asked Balmordan. "Are we to understand that you also would be interested in the purchase of a middling plasmoid or two?" "I would be, naturally," Balmordan said. "But not at the risk of causing trouble for my government." "Of course not," Quillan said. He thought a moment. "You, Belchy?" he asked. Pluly looked alarmed. "No, no, no," he said hastily. He blinked wildly. "I'll stick to the shipping business. It's safer." Quillan patted him fondly on the shoulder. "That's one law-abiding citizen in this group." He winked at Trigger. "Trigger is wondering," he told Lyad, "why she and I are being told these things." "Well, obviously," Lyad said, "Trigger and you are in an excellent position, or will be very soon, to act as middlemen in the matter." "What?" Trigger began, astounded. Then, as all eyes swiveled over to her, she checked herself. "Did you really think," she asked Lyad, "that we'd agree to such a thing?" "Certainly not," said Lyad. "I don't expect anyone to agree to anything tonight. Though it's a safe assumption I'm not the only one here who has made sure this conversation is not being recorded and will not be available for reconstruction." "Well, Quillan?" She smiled. "How right you are, First Lady," Quillan said. He tapped a breast pocket. "Scrambler and Distorter present and in action." "And you, Balmordan?" "I must admit," Balmordan said pleasantly, "that I thought it wise to take certain precautions." "Very wise," said Lyad. Her glance shifted, with some amusement in it, to Pluly. "Belchik?" "You're a nerve-wracking woman, Lyad," Belchik said unhappily. "Yes, I'm scrambling, of course." He shuddered. "I can't afford to take chances. Not when you're around." "Of course not. And even so," said Lyad, "there are still reasons why an unconsidered word might be embarrassing in this company. So no, Trigger, I'm not expecting anybody to agree to anything tonight. I'm merely mentioning that I'm interested in the purchase of plasmoids. Incidentally, I'd be very much more interested even in seeing you and Quillan enter my employ directly. Yes, Belchik?" Pluly had begun giggling wildly. "I was having the same idea," he gasped. "About one of them anyway. He jerked and came to an abrupt stop, transfixed by Trigger's stare. Then he reached for his glass, blinking at top speed. "Excuse me," he muttered. Hardly, Belchik, said Lyad. She gave Trigger a small wink. But I can assure you, Trigger Argee, that you'd find my pay and working conditions very attractive indeed. It seemed a good moment to look inscrutable. Trigger did. Serious about that, Lyad? Said Quillan. The Ermetyne said, Certainly I'm serious. Both of you could be of great value to me at present. She looked at him a moment. Did you ever happen to tell Trigger about the manner in which you re-established the family fortune? Not in any great detail, Quillan said. A very good hijacker and smuggler went to waste when you signed up with the engineers, Lyad said. But perhaps not entirely to waste. Perhaps not, acknowledged Quillan. He grinned. But I'm a modest man. One fortune's enough for me. There was a time, you know, Lyad said, when I was rather afraid it would be necessary to have you killed. Quillan laughed. There was a time, he admitted, when I suspected you might be thinking along those lines, First Lady. Didn't lose too much, did you? I lost enough, Lyad said. She wrinkled her nose at him. But that's all over and done with. And now, no more business tonight. I promise. She turned her head a little. Flam, she called. Yes, First Lady, said the voice of the red-headed girl. Bring us Miss Argee's property, please. Flam brought in a small package of flat disks taped together. Lyad took them. Sometimes, she told Quillan, the Askab becomes a little independent. He's been spoken to. Here, you keep them for Trigger. She tossed the package lightly over to them. Quillan put out a hand and caught it. Thanks, he said. He put the package in a pocket. I'll call off my beagles. Suit yourself as to that, said the Ermetyne. It won't hurt the Askab to stay frightened a little longer. She checked herself. The room's ComWeb was signaling. Virod went over to it. A voice came through. The Garth Manon subspace run begins in 1 hour. Rest cubicles have been prepared. That means me, Belchik Pluly said. He climbed hastily to his feet. Can't stand dives. Get hallucinations, nasty ones. He staggered a little then, and Trigger realized for the first time that Belchik had gotten pretty thoroughly drunk. Better give our guest a hand, Virod, Lyad called over her shoulder. Happy dreams, Belchik. Are you going by rest, Trigger? No? You're not, of course, Quillan. Balmordan? The dig of a scientist also shook his head. Then by all means, Lyad said, let's stay together a little while longer. End of chapter 14.